I've thought several times in the last year or so what my personal record would be in terms of the longest time it had taken me to get a joke. And I've thought now that there's one that I still am getting and that I heard in childhood, but the process of getting it is still not complete at a time when it's very important for us to understand when we're being told something that's a joke and we're being kept from understanding. It's from the comic strip Peanuts by Charles Schulz, and the character involved is Snoopy. Trendiness is a fundamental aspect of Snoopy's character. He has a deep desire to be popular, and many of the things he does are toward that goal. He does impressions of people. He fantasizes about being different people and different animals, and perhaps the occasional thing or two. And one of his characters, one of his personae that he adopts is called Joe Cool, whose whole purpose is to be cool, which partly involves following the latest trend. So it appears to be a simple joke to get, when, in several instances, two of the characters are observing other people, adopting a certain trend and or buying a certain product and using it. Then they see Snoopy doing the same thing, and the dialogue goes, everybody's doing that now. They look at various people, boys and girls, everybody, and then the punchline is, after looking at Snoopy doing the same thing, everybody. So there's this indicator that Snoopy provides that you know a trend is really getting big and possibly people's common sense is being overwhelmed and it's becoming absurd when Snoopy jumps on the bandwagon. But there are other meanings potentially built into this as well. One is that the joke of seeing people adopt this trend and having Snoopy confirm it is not told just once. It comes up over and over again in the comic strip over time. So the joke itself becomes a trend, and it raises the question of whether people are laughing at it just because they're starting to recognize the pattern. Are they laughing at it not because they themselves see what's funny in it, but they see that other people are laughing at it? Or are they laughing at it because it's ironic and saying everybody is adopting this behavior when only some people are understanding some aspect of the joke? What I found critical about it, and only recently, was that there's this expression about trendiness, that a trend is becoming exaggerated in people's minds and overblown when people use the expression, everybody and his dog is doing it, or everybody and their dog is doing it. In Peanuts, this is partly conveyed by pictures. So the awkwardness of having the pronoun that's masculine singular having to be converted in the mind of the hearer to something gender inclusive and plural is skated past, avoided, by using just pictures to convey the sense of everyone doing something, showing both boys and girls doing it and then the dog. But when you use just pictures and make the joke operate more smoothly in that respect, then you're also missing out on the verbal part of the punchline, because you're shown everyone and then the dog, but the line is missing. So in one respect it's easier to laugh, and in the other it's not as easy to understand why one is laughing. Now when this carries over, it becomes the time capsule type of joke, in that the joke becomes funny in a different way or can't be understood until years in the future after it's originally told, because some aspect of society takes on a different meaning or some historical event takes place, which then gives a new meaning to the whole thing. One of these is that perhaps outside science fiction. People could not have previously imagined a circumstance in which people who wanted to have dogs, for the most part, didn't already have them. So the joke of everybody and his dog doing something becomes a meta joke in circumstances in which everybody and his dog is suddenly going out to get a dog. So in the current situation, we had something people might not have expected, in that human contact in many ways has been banned. And so some people are seeking out a dog as compensation for the human contact they've lost. This is a joke in another way, in that it may have been intended as a form of social engineering to get people to get used to being on their own and not resort to other beings for contact. But then they would circumvent the attempted cure for some disease that requires isolation by just getting a dog instead of a person. This is central to the movie from the successor to Tangled, Frozen, in that the cure for a set of ills of the character is isolation. And it would not have worked the same way if that character had just gotten a dog and circumvented the whole thing. So in the previous movie as well, Tangled, it's all about isolation. Somebody being put under lockdown in a tower, and there have been multiple commentaries on this, but they seem to have still missed the central, as I would see it, point of the movie, the irony, the joke, in that although the kingdom is called Corona, there is no virus. People in Corona are dying, but they're dying of aging. And the lockdown is not to prevent the central character from getting a virus, but to prevent her from curing everyone else's aging. It's about isolating not the disease, but the cure. In Peanuts, there's something similar in that the characters, as cartoon characters, do not age. We perceive them not beyond a certain age of childhood, and they're like that all the time. And they stay that way over decades of our perception of them. So the idea of everybody and his dog doing something is undermined by the way the comic works, because the ultimate trendiness is mortality. Presumably everyone is mortal, everyone is aging. But in Peanuts, everyone is not aging beyond a certain point. And to try to make an analogy between the comic strip and real life brings up some absurd comparisons. The number one now is that Snoopy is being used in this everybody and his dog is doing it sense to promote the idea of wearing a mask. I did a search and found several images of Snoopy wearing a mask. And this is absurd not only because he doesn't age, and coronavirus for all practical purposes is almost the same as aging. The severity of the virus depends exponentially on how old someone is. The older you are, the more severe it is, and it goes up drastically with age. So the main reason people get ill from coronavirus has nothing to do with virality. It's as we know it, and there's no cure being offered that will get to the core of the issue, which is aging. So Snoopy as a character is not aging, so to show him wearing a mask is ridiculous in that sense, but it goes even farther, because according to the American Kennel Club, although Peanuts, as far as I know, is a comic strip conceived by an American and to do with American popular culture, there is no confirmed case of an American dog getting COVID-19. There are a couple from elsewhere in the world. They mention Hong Kong. But it's almost non-existent as far as dogs getting it or transmitting it or being severely affected by COVID-19. So it makes even less sense in that sense to show Snoopy as an advertisement telling people that they should be wearing masks, and to show him leading by example, supposedly, by wearing a mask when, as a dog and as a cartoon character who doesn't age, he can't be affected by the virus. So that's what clicked in for me, and it took me about a year from the time I thought, hey, this run-on joke in Peanuts may be a commentary on the phrase, everybody and his dog is doing it. It took me another year to click in as to why I made that realization about a year ago when the pandemic was starting to take on a larger dimension.